All right, I think we will get started today. Again, thank you for joining and taking the time out of your day to be part of this presentation, everyone. Again, this is the Bringfood webinar, the route planning app that is transforming food accessibility. I first wanted to give a quick shout out to our Appgio webinar series, which this event is a part of. You can find the recording of this event at its conclusion, as well as many other previous webinars at appgio.com/events. And we have a number of webinars coming up for the remainder of 2020. So if you find the content of this presentation interesting, we encourage you to check out some of our other webinars. Wanted to go through some quick introductions for today for our presenters, starting with Priya. She's a project manager here at Appgio with over 15 years of experience managing local government clients and a heavy focus on web development. And she is our Spatial IQ team member and an outreach manager for that program. We're also joined today by Ross. He's an application developer here and a team leader for the application development team at Appgio. He is an experienced software engineer with a background in disaster response and relief, and he was the lead developer for the Bringfood application, which we're all here to see today. So excited to have Ross aboard to speak about the application. And we are honored to be joined by Susan Dorson. She's a community organizer with over 12 years of experience in the nonprofit sector, and she is the program manager for ArlingtonEATS, focused on improving the quality, quantity, and accessibility to food while working closely with local organizations to connect people in need. She'll be speaking as one of the test users for the Bringfood initiative. And myself, Aaron Doucette, I'm a sales engineer here at Appgio. I have a background in GIS analysis on a variety of types of clients, and my role here at Appgio, in addition to hosting this webinar series, is empowering our clients with demos and interactive ways to see the type of work that we do. So with that, I'd like to get our presentation started here. From here, just a quick agenda of what our presentation will look like today. We just did our introductions and welcome. Part one will be looking at what this Bringfood initiative is, an introduction to the program, and looking at a case study here with our wonderful companion, ArlingtonEATS. Part two, looking a little bit behind the development of this application, how it all came together. That'll be presented by Ross, and then I'll be showing a live demo of the app to give you an idea for what it can do and the look and feel. And then lastly, how to get started, how Appgio can get you set up on this application, and what steps you would take to sign up. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Priya and Susan, who will be initiating a conversation here.
Thanks, Aaron. Hello, everybody. Really happy to be with you all today. To get started, we're basically going to welcome Susan because she's our guest speaker today. And Susan and I actually live in the same town in Arlington, Massachusetts, and we've known each other for a while. Kids were in elementary school at the same time, so it's been a long association. So when we started to brainstorm on this topic and what we should do as a response to COVID, I kind of knew that, okay, I could reach out to Susan. And we learned a lot from Susan along the way about how food pantries work and the process and the workflow and the industry. So welcome, Susan, to us.
Thank you so much, Priya. Thank you, and thank you all for having me. I really have been excited to be a part of this process. But before we get started today, Priya, can you tell us how this initiative got started and how your company got involved with food insecurity? It seems a little different from what I imagine you might normally be working on.
Yeah, this is all thanks to Rich Grady. He's the president of Appgio, and he really wanted to do something in response to the pandemic. Appgio is a small company based in Boston, but we have a national presence. We specialize in solving geospatial problems. So if you have anything that has a spatial element to it, we will solve it for you. And we've been in business for 29 years now in the public and private sectors, working on a huge variety of projects. And so Bringfood is really a product of Rich's leadership. He quickly mobilized a team. We started brainstorming issues and where we can help out best. And we zeroed in on food insecurity. And that's when I reached out to you, and we understood the food insecurity population and how it accesses food. So what were some of the challenges you saw, Susan, along the way? I mean, you were on the front line. So what were you seeing when COVID hit, and how did you respond to that?
Right. Well, when first people started to hear about COVID and we knew it was maybe on the horizon and becoming an issue, we saw a sudden jump in the need for food. Initially, there was about a 50% increase in the families that were coming to us. And before quarantine started, we were putting together a lot of safety protocols. But as soon as people were told to stay home, we knew we had to make a huge shift. And that shift went from about fewer than 5% of our families we did home delivery to, and suddenly we were jumping to complete home delivery, so 100% home delivery. So it was a huge jump, and we knew we had to do it in terms of safety, and also there was everyone was in quarantine, and so our town Department of Health decided that we really needed to be pushing the food out and not bringing people to our market anymore.
So how were you making these deliveries? Did you have volunteers helping out?
So we were very lucky to be able to team up with the Medical Reserve Corps, and they supply a lot of our delivery drivers, which was fabulous because they took care of recruiting and bringing them to us. But the downside was that they came from many different communities, so they didn't necessarily know Arlington. So when you're delivering food and I hand you a random list of addresses, that became an issue pretty immediately.
So when I came to you, you already had a problem, which we were like ready to solve, and you communicated that to me. So that was like what, I think early April.
Yeah. I think we've been doing it a couple weeks by the time you contacted me, and I've just been kind of making random routes and handing them out. And so you and I had a conversation, and then I sat down with your team. And I listened to my problem, and within 6 weeks, you gave me the access to the beta application. Oh, it was a really crazy quick turnaround. That was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty amazing because we were in agile mode. And Ross, who you'll be seeing what he did shortly, was he was quickly able to design this and deploy the application. We basically started brainstorming in April, started development late April with what you had told us, and the beta application was rolled out mid-May. And we gave it to you and to two other organizations, Somerville and Chelsea, which was a very hard hit a city in the Boston area. And I think pretty much you were rolling with it while you gave us some tweaks to make, and we launched the website in July for everybody to access. So yeah, it was we were very pleased with the agile mode that we were in and how we got this out. So what was it like for you to be a tester on this platform, Susan? Because you gave us a lot of insights into how we could change the application.
Right. The whole process was so new to me. I've never kind of been a part of something like that before. And I'm not very technical, so I wasn't sure what I could ask or what I could expect the team to do. But the team always listened to me and said, "Oh yeah, that's doable," or "Well, let's think about this possibility." So what was wonderful is I was able to come with all of my thoughts or concerns, and the team was very responsive. And it felt like a collaboration because you were trying to make something useful for people, and I was able to kind of come to you with all the different ideas of things that were affecting our particular community. And we also, I think, discussed some ideas of how large communities might need different things as well. So it was a real team effort, and there were a number of meetings, and then in the end result, I had a wonderful an app to work with, and the process was very smooth, so it was fantastic.
So it's been I think 3 months now that you've been using it, and so how has it helped you? And can you you've used it firsthand, so what are the benefits you've seen?
Right. So I think I said earlier, initially I would just get a list of addresses and I basically cut them up and hand them to drivers. And so it was kind of, they would often be running all over town, and especially the ones who weren't from around here, they didn't know the logical progression of how to go. And so I think there was a lot of time wasted. So once I had the app, I was able to give them an easy, logical route that was based on kind of different clumps in different parts of town, and the drivers were able to have something that different, not going everywhere. And we recently had a Zoom volunteer meetup, and some of the delivery drivers were there, and they were commenting on how our system was so organized and easy to use and easy to navigate. And I think, it certainly helps with volunteer retention and satisfaction and getting the food out to people faster, especially in the hot weather. You don't want food sitting in cars for a long period of time either. So it really makes things, keeps people happy, keeps our volunteers safely and quickly to the destination. So I can really see a huge improvement, and I always felt really bad giving them those lists of random things. And now I know they've got an organized route, and that feels good. So it's been great.
So what's your workflow like? I mean, how do you do the delivery? I mean, who runs the application? Do you have that all in place, and how does that work out? Maybe the audience would like to hear that if they start using it.
So our system is based on a Google form, and the clients go in each week and they fill out their food preferences and then other basic information like their address and phone number. And we deliver 3 days a week. So the night before at 5 p.m. is the cutoff, at which point I have volunteers who we've trained to use all of the Google Forms and in your app, and they take the information, put it into a spreadsheet, and then move the addresses.
And how do you give the routes to the drivers?
So they're created in the app, and then we turn them into driving lists, and we do that through a Google extension called Save as Doc, and that turns them into basically individual documents. And the next day when the drivers show up to pick up the food bags, we hand them a delivery route, and then they just take the corresponding bags and they're ready to go.
That's great, Susan. It's been such a great experience working with you, and we really appreciate your bringing this problem to us, and also the fact that we could solve it. So you will all see everything that Susan and I have been talking about in action shortly, with Aaron doing a demo for us. But before we get into that, for you techies out there, Ross is going to go a little bit under the hood, not too technical, because I know that everybody has different levels of technology here, but he's going to share a little bit about the app with us and tell us how he put it together. Thank you. Ross?
All right.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Susan. Definitely was invaluable having you, as well as everybody else who helped prototype and kind of pilot the application to really get it to the place that it is now. But yeah, I promise I won't get super technical. I'm going to keep this very, very high level and kind of talk about some of the challenges we had, kind of our motivation when we were building this, and that whole process and how we went through it. And then I believe you're going to get a nice demo. So we can go to the next slide. So a big part of this was when we first started talking about ways that we could help out with this. Eventually we kind of landed on this use case, obviously, of food delivery and delivery in general during times of need like this, and how we would kind of solve this issue. And we kind of been talking about this problem internally for a bit, and how we would solve this, and this kind of gave us the nice impetus to be able to actually say, hey, let's go do this. Let's make sure we can make something that kind of helps out during this situation. And we really just wanted to make sure we made something that was really, really streamlined, really easy to use, kind of this whole problem of having a large number of addresses and trying to make a bunch of optimized routes out of that can be a kind of a complex problem to solve, but we wanted to make sure that for all our users that it was very straightforward, easy to use, that there wasn't a lot of things that you had to do to kind of get what you needed. We also really wanted to make sure that it was going to be able to handle a lot of different types of address formats. Some things have apartment numbers, some things are formatted very differently, and sometimes you have all those fields broken up differently, coming in from a Google form or something like that, or sometimes it's just one field that the user types in where their address is. And we wanted to make sure that it was really flexible, that it could kind of work for everybody's use case. So we made it so that basically you could take some of your data that you've gotten from whether it's content management system or Google Forms or Airtable, and you could just export that to a CSV, bring it into the application. You'll see later in the demo what the process you have to take, but basically you identify which of those columns are address fields, things that have a street number or a street name or et cetera. And then once we do that, we'll go through the process of converting those into coordinates you could put on a map and cluster them and make some optimized routes from that. But the last thing I really want to point out too is that we really wanted to make sure that this was a very privacy-first application. Obviously, that's a huge deal these days, and when you're dealing with something like food insecurity, that really, really matters. And so, we're making sure that any data that needs to be sent to our server for route optimization is only sending this kind of latitude, longitude coordinates, no other identifying information, nothing of the sort. Most of the time, this application, all you're going to be doing is putting it in your browser. The data is going to stay there until we have to get directions for those optimized routes. And once we get those, we'll send it out into a CSV, and then you can do what you will with it. So we're trying to make this very, very streamlined, and getting a lot of input from all of the people during our pilot program was really, really helpful to try to make sure that we could do that and make this work for several different kind of use cases, because I know everybody kind of might have different things they need, but also keep it really, really simple. So I want to go to the next slide. So this is kind of just an example, just to kind of show what's happening. So if you give us, your CSV full of addresses, we may get some address. In this case, we're going to say it's a single field that just has this address here. We'll do some parsing. So we'll kind of identify, what's the street number, what's the street name, is there a city in there, is a state in there, get any sort of other information that we'd need from the user if there wasn't a city or a state, because I know a lot of these food pantries, including Arlington, they're only serving the Arlington community, so they don't make their users say that they're living in Arlington. They're expecting them to be there. So anyways, we'll identify all those components, then we'll send it to Google's geocoding API, which really will then convert that into a latitude and longitude coordinate, which then allows us to put that on a map and be able to do our clustering for that and make some optimized routes. So if you want to go to the next slide, we'll talk about some of the challenges that we had with this. And this was honestly something that probably took up the vast majority of my time. And so addresses come in many forms here. And so this is kind of an example address you might get. It's decently clean. You can kind of see what everything is. And you've got a street number, direction, street name, street type, unit, city, state, and zip. And there are a lot of different types of formats of addresses. If you live in Queens, you'll know that they can have a unique system there, and it can change a lot. So this is a very clean address. It's very easy to identify what all the parts of that address are. What really happens, especially if you just have something that a user is giving you in a Google form or something like that, you'll get something like this. It may be some things might be misspelled. You may get some additional information in there that you don't necessarily need when you're trying to convert it to a latitude longitude coordinate. You may not get a proper identifier for whether it's it's apartment number this or unit number this or whatever. A lot of times you might have a street name that's Route 53, and comparing that to Market Street 34, when you're actually trying to get those address components can actually be a little bit trickier when you're trying to do it very kind of automate that process and not have a human eye to look at it. So in this case, we'll know we can get the street number, street name, street type. Those are all pretty straightforward. We get to 34, we say maybe that's a unit, maybe that's part of the street, not totally sure. You get that last part, and when you automate this process, it might think, oh, maybe that's the city or part of the state or something like that. And when you try to then send that to a geocoding API, you can get confused by things like that. So we had to do a lot of work in cleaning up addresses, really identifying what are those different components of an address, and using that to then be able to send a nicely formatted address to the geocoding API so it could get us accurate latitude and longitude coordinates. So that was a really, really big, a bigger lift than I realized it was going to be when we first started this. But it's been pretty educational and pretty interesting. And I think what we ended up with at the end of the day is really useful. I think you'll be able to see it here in the demo here shortly. But if you do get an address that maybe doesn't totally match, and maybe at some point there's only so much you can do to try to make an address totally match, you can then manually go in and try to fix the address and get it to match. And there's a little bit of a user verification process in there. But I will say, I think like 90% something of the addresses on a regular basis, we're like getting those to automatically geocode, and it's only the ones that have a little bit of funkiness or have maybe a weird apartment number or something that you have to come in and manually do anything with. And then there is a whole other part of this. Once we convert all this to latitude and longitude coordinates, then we've got one of our other developers, Calvin, did some amazing work with some algorithms that he wrote up to be able to identify unique clusters of where all those points are. So you can say, I want 10 routes from all these, let's say 150 addresses or something like that. And it'll identify what are all those kind of pockets of addresses that are near each other. So you're not jumping back and forth across, a town between and ping ponging between addresses. So once we do that, then we'll also pass it the Google Directions API, which you can have optimize your waypoints. So basically, we'll send it a list of addresses, and it'll say this is the best order to go to those addresses. So then you can really optimize that, and waste less time of your drivers. Make sure you're wasting less fuel, and you're really getting people food as quickly as possible. But I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic back over to Aaron. But thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions at the end.
Awesome. Thank you, Ross. I'm going to jump back just a little bit to give an opportunity to tell everyone a little bit about Appgio, the company behind Bringfood initiative. We're a company based in Boston, and geospatial information and technology is really our passion. We are actually spread all around the country, so we have Pri and I out of our Boston pod and people in Texas. So at the current time, the fact that our company is very distributed meant this project brought together people from a lot of different offices and was really an opportunity for me to get to see the passion that so many people within the company bring to this initiative. And I also mentioned that Bringfood is built on the Google Maps platform, for which Appgio is a premier partner, and is really a core part of the technology behind this application. I wanted to share, before we hop into the demo, this quote from Rich Grady, our company president, who actually kind of kicked off this initiative at the early stages and kind of the early days of the pandemic, when we knew we wanted to do something. And that COVID-19 has brought a certain clarity to the work that we do. We felt compelled to do something. We decided to focus our expertise and access to technology to a widespread and pressing problem, the hunger and food insecurity created by the pandemic. Bringfood, our routing and delivery solution, is already helping food pantries manage home deliveries, calculating in seconds the multi-vehicle, multi-stop routing plans that could take hours to map out by hand. And our commitment to creating Bringfood has fed a consistent level of energy and enthusiasm within our company to do the right thing. Again, Richard Grady, company president here at Appgio, and that's really the core philosophy of this initiative. So to summarize a little bit of what we've heard about so far in this presentation, with the pandemic that you are all undoubtedly so aware of by now, the demand at these organizations has never been greater. However, many organizations, including Arlington, who you heard from today, had no pre-existing home delivery infrastructure prior to this pandemic. And if they did, it was very minimal and on a case-by-case basis. However, the immediate need to keep these vulnerable individuals safe and at a distance came up, and especially when demand is now greatest and the most vulnerable people need to be staying home, how do we get them their food? Well, we have this great network of volunteers, but how can we leverage that network of volunteers to do what they do best, actually helping the community? Well, give them tools to make their job easier. And that's the Bringfood application, and that's what we're going to look at right now. So before we hop into the full demo here, you've heard about the geocoding from Ross, you've heard about the address verification. Now we're gonna actually see how the application looks, feels, and works. And by the end of this, I think you'd all be capable of using it yourselves, I'm sure, with a little bit of playing around. So the application starts with submitting your data. Now this can be an Excel form or CSV that you could generate from your own list, or perhaps a Google form automation, as Susan pointed out earlier. But we're essentially just uploading our data of addresses, all of our potential stops. And I've prepared a little sample sheet here. Again, just a simple CSV file with all of the addresses, same thing you'd have in Excel. And these are just random ones that I created for our demonstration. Now, going into a little bit of what Ross was talking about, it is brought our file in, and these are all the different fields that you'd have in Excel. So we're going to tell the application what each of these are very quickly to ensure the most accurate placement on the map. So this is the street address, we have the city, zip code, all of these are here in Massachusetts. And an interesting feature is actually the number of boxes or bags that we'd expect at each delivery. That can be built into the app. And this is going to become very useful when we get to the next step, as when we're putting the route together, we can take this into consideration. Now, we could also have additional fields like name or a drop-off location or any other kind of ID. These won't necessarily be needed by the application as required fields, but they'll be carried through to the final output. So our drivers will know, all right, this one's going to go up against the garage at this house, or maybe this one's going to go at the front door. They'll be able to see that in the end. So now we're getting to the fun part. We've assigned the headers, and it's now running all those addresses into a geocoder, which is what puts them on the map. So here we are just outside of Boston, nearby where I live, and it's put about those 40 or so points on the map. And if I were to click on any of them, I'd get the address and all those details. This is basically an opportunity to verify that what we inputted looks correct. So for example, if I know my organization doesn't deliver to the town of Belmont, I can either edit this address if I know they just typed the wrong town, or dismiss it entirely, and it gets taken out of the pool. So we don't have someone driving far away to somewhere they don't need to be going. Now, the great thing about this application is we have a couple variables to play with, which make it a very powerful tool for route optimization. The first is defining the distribution center. So that would be like the location of our food pantry where all of the stops are originating from. In this case, I'm going to use a grocery store just as an example here. What's great is with Google Maps underneath, we can click on any point that we recognize, quickly get an address. I'm going to put that in as our starting point, and the app is now picked up on that, and we have that as our home base, so to speak. Now we have two variables to play here, which are very important, a max delivery size or a max number of routes. And what's interesting here is, depending on who our volunteers are that day, whether I have 3 drivers or 12, that very well can determine how large of a route each one will be assigned, what's most efficient. So, and also, how much space do they have in their vehicle? If someone has a regular 4-door car, that might only be able to fit so much, versus if you have small cargo vans that can take a lot more. So being able to have those kind of considerations is quite relevant. So in this case, we're going to do max number of routes because that would be determined by the number of drivers. And let's say that in this case, we have 4 drivers to make all of these deliveries for this day. I just hit optimize routes and the application is going to do its thing. It's found the most efficient way to get 4 people to each assigned location that they've automatically given them based on what is most efficient. So this green route here starts at the store, heads north, heads to the first stop, second stop, snakes its way around, and hits this final one before then returning back to the home base. You can see the same thing for this red route here, and then this maroon, kind of dark red one here, and then purple hit all these 6 over here. But say something changed. Say now instead of 4 routes, we have 6 people that showed up to drive, and we don't want to turn any of our volunteers away. So give them a few less stops each, and they'll be there even quicker. We can immediately re-optimize. It will only take a couple seconds, and now it's found the most efficient way to distribute those points with 6 drivers instead of 4. You have a lot of flexibility when it comes to these optimization strategies, and especially when you have complex geography, like here in Boston, the roads can be crazy. So having people stick to one area will keep things a lot quicker. We'd also have satellite view here in case you want to drill down and really make sure that, all right, this is ending up at the right place. I put this one on a post office here just so you can see, yes, indeed, it is dropping that pin right on the roof of that building where we assigned a delivery. So you have access to some great maps in addition to the routes in here. So lastly, all right, this is great. We have it in the web app, but how do we actually get the information to our drivers? That's what Ross had mentioned with that export CSV. we can click that. It's downloaded it to my computer, and I can open it up and, oops, let's see, I'll open this one up. It will have something you can print out and hand out. We are possibly looking at even turning this into a turn-by-turn type of application in the future too, where it would take each driver through their list. Let's see. So Excel seems to be having a problem for some reason, but you can imagine it would look very similar to the input data, except now we have a driver and a stop order assigned to each route, which is very useful. One last feature I'll mention is we have Google Street View functionality. So say it's an area where your volunteers aren't like particularly familiar with, or it's really dense and they want to make sure they know who to look for. You can drop the little Street View guy, put him right on the road, and actually get a view of where you'll be going before you get there to verify you're at the correct house, maybe check things out before you hit the road, and then make it a lot easier for your volunteers. So we appreciate the fact that we have that functionality in there. So again, to summarize, we started just by uploading that data, picking our optimization strategy, and then visualizing our route with all the stop orders. We have some new features we've actually just added in the past few weeks, such as some documentation in the form of a user manual and the ability to go in and actually have an account through the application that your organization would be able to log into. So again, some great improvements have been made in a relatively short amount of time, and I encourage, if you have any questions about how to use it or what the functionality includes, feel free to ask them, and we can dive a little deeper in the Q&A here. I just wanted to give you a quick overview of getting started. You know, if this all sounds good, where do you go from here? The first step is going to be to head over to the website that our team created for Bringfood, and that's bringfood.care. We have some comprehensive information about the program there, as well as some testimonials from current users, a little more detail. It's a great place to find out more about the initiative. And once you're on that website, you'll see this apply button, and it's a very simple form. Your organization will just fill out a contact name and email, the type of organization you are and where you're located, and what your intended usage is. And again, we're making this free of charge for qualifying organizations. So, those nonprofits that are directly responding to the COVID pandemic are our core user group right now. We are looking down the road at expanding Bringfood to some other avenues, and we have a lot in mind for the future of this application. So if you don't quite fit into this exact user group, definitely get in touch with us anyway, and we'll keep you updated on how you might be able to get on in the future or what things will look like down the road. And always happy to hear different use cases. And again, probably takes under 5 minutes to apply, and we'd love to have you on board. I think we are rapidly signing up more and more organizations nationwide. I think I heard on our call yesterday, we are now in over 30 states across the country, which is pretty remarkable. So we'd love to bring that to 50. So just to summarize what we've learned today before we head into the Q&A, communities are really adapting to the challenges presented, and we wanted to address one very specific one. Having the right technology can help your volunteers do more in less time, less getting lost or fussing about who's going to go where. Let people spend their time doing what they do best, which is being out there in the community and actually making a difference. And Appgio is here for you to help with that. Access is free for qualifying users, and we'd love to get in touch and hear your story as we continue to build this application and service it out. From there, I'd like to turn it over to the Q&A if the other presenters want to hop back on video, and I will open up the question panel here to see what has come in. It does look like we have a few, so this should be exciting. So the first one coming in and this looks like it might be good for Priya or Ross. Do you have plans to add a mobile app, and would it be possible to have several pickup locations?
I can touch a little bit on this. I'm happy to. The way we've designed this, it's kind of thing where there's not really a need for a mobile application. You can run this directly from your browser inside of your phone, and it's designed to be somewhat mobile friendly. It's definitely an interface where, because you're going to be uploading a CSV and getting a CSV back, in its current form, it is definitely a little bit more geared towards a desktop experience as far as doing that and being able to view all of those. But I mean, it is possible to do it on a mobile device at this point, and we are hoping to keep it, very mobile friendly for that. As far as having multiple different pickups, it doesn't currently support that. That's something that we are looking into for the future. We understand that everybody's use case is very different, and it's really hard to kind of hit them all with one single application. But that is something that we are looking at as a potential future feature, among many other things. So potential for the future, I'm not going to make any promises right now on that front. But yeah, if there's a decent amount of people that's a use case that they need, that's something that we're definitely going to look into pursuing.
Awesome. And I'll mention, because it's so quick to run, it's easy enough to keep changing that start location and just put a new CSV up there for that batch. Hopefully that's not too much of an encumberment, but it would be a workaround that you could do right away. I'm going to head on to the next question here. Let's see. Susan, what logistical challenges have occurred using the program, drivers having additional GPS for the routes, geocode addresses? I guess maybe we can simplify this just asking if there's been any feedback from the drivers that you've worked with, Susan.
I think by and large, they take the list, and it has the stops in order that make the most sense. And I think they just plug them into their GPS one at a time and take it through town. So my understanding is that it's working really well. And yeah, and I think it's very great. They just do one at a time and put it into their GPS. So I'm not quite sure.
Yep, that sounds good. A couple other questions from the same asker here. Is there a way to select routes and/or stops in the application after optimization has been made? I believe you definitely can select the stops to get more details on those. Is there any functionality around selecting routes at this time?
So that's one of the next things that we're hoping to add to the application, is the ability to toggle on and off different routes, so you can have a little more a better view. We understand that, especially if you're in a smaller town that has kind of a main artery road that goes through it, a lot of those routes are going to overlap, and it's going to be a little bit hard to view them. So that is something that is one of the higher priority things that we're looking to include into the application in the future.
Cool. I want to make sure I get to all these, but it looks like another comment from the same asker is the ability to maybe pass those colors on to what is downloaded. So people know, like, all right, I'm on green, here's my green list. Some of that functionality, those are some great ideas. Thank you. I'm going to try to move on to the next question because we are getting a lot, all very good. This one looks like it's for Susan. Would love to learn more about safety protocols when it comes to delivery. Also curious how the choice, I see, we did talk about this one a little bit, how the choice, I assume, like picking your items has not been able to be maintained when moving away from the market pickup model. So safety and then choice of items, I think, are the two questions there, Susan.
Okay, so with safety, that was part of the reason we use the Medical Reserve Corps. They have a lot of training around different things. We do have some of our own volunteers. They tend to do fewer of the public housing buildings. That's generally reserved to the Medical Reserve Corps. And in terms of safety, the way we work it is the volunteers are instructed to drop the bags at the door, get to their car, and then call. And so that way there's no interaction between the people, so it's a safe drop off. And the people know that there's a 1.5 hour window the food could be dropped off and they need to be home. So that's how it works. And if we don't get an answer, we have volunteers who continue to do follow-up calls and make sure that they get a hold of the people. But we haven't had any problems with that so far. And what was the second one, Aaron? Oh, in terms of choice.
Oh, yeah, choice.
That was very important for me that people continue to maintain choice. I didn't want to give, I mean, we have a lot of families who are lactose intolerant and don't want milk, and we have families who are vegetarian and they don't want chicken and tuna. So we do have an actual order form where people make choices. It's more like broad choices, but they definitely have choices, and we try to stick to that as closely as possible. We don't have everything in stock all the time, but we try very hard to give people choice of at least the basic things. My produce tends to change faster, so that they also have a place where they can put things that they don't like or are allergic to, and then they can have a request section as well. But if you need to know more about that, feel free to reach out to me through the Arlington Eats website.
Awesome. And yeah, I'll mention when we were looking at the fields there, it would be easy to have an additional field for, say, a food allergy, so the driver would see that as they're making the stop right there along with the rest of the addresses. Let's see, one question coming in here: would the app be able to route based on preferred delivery times, and is there a way to run reports on the outputs?
So currently, it's not dealing with delivery times. I understand that that is definitely a use case when you're dropping off food. Currently, it's not in the application to set specific time frames at which to optimize that. Another feature that we are looking into is specifying times specifically geared towards being able to optimize those routes for potential traffic issues. So that is another thing we're looking at adding into it. Adding in specific drop-off times. That's something that at this point, to keep it flexible for everyone, you probably want to just grab all of those people that you'd have during specific times and just route those individually during those time frames that you'd be doing those deliveries. So yeah, we don't currently have the option to input all those things. And a lot of the stuff, some of the features that we don't have in there is really based on privacy, so that we're not storing a ton of stuff in a database currently, of having all those things and storing it in there to do a lot of that optimization and come back in there. We're really not storing, we're not storing any data. And that's one of the things that we really want to make sure moving forward, that we continue to be able to maintain the level of privacy that we have within the application. It's really just a tool, just something you can put data in and you get data out, or not really persisting any data at all.
Cool, I think that helps. And again, feel free to keep answering questions. All of our presenters are available until at least 3 o'clock, so we have plenty of time to get to everyone. A comment coming in here: this is amazing. Well, thank you. Is this available for people living in New York? Just need verification, and sounds like they're interested in signing up. So Priya, is it available in New York?
Yes, definitely. As Aaron had said, we have about 30 states where organizations, over 60 organizations have signed up and are, we're hoping using the application. But yes, you're in New York, you can sign up and we will, do a quick check and give you access. Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Another comment saying we'd love to have multiple pickup sites, so maybe we'll keep that in the back of mind. Let's see, just trying to make sure I don't miss anything. Let's see, here's another one for Priya. Who should we be in touch with if we would like someone to do a presentation to nonprofits in our area?
That's a great question. Reach out to me, and I think at the end of this, Aaron, I don't know if you've got contact information out there, but you can also email support@bringfood.care, and that email will be on the website. So you can reach out there or directly to me. My email is just psankalia@appgeo.com, and we can arrange something for sure.
Awesome. Let's see.
I saw something in there about being able to, I think, have some other, be able to specify some data for each location. And I just wanted to, I know we didn't really get to see it during the webinar, so I just want to clarify that the CSV that you'll submit to be able to use for the optimization, you'll basically get the exact same CSV out the other end, with just a couple extra fields saying specifically what route that address is going to be on, I believe the size of the delivery potentially, and then also obviously the stop number.
Exactly. So the real value add that we are doing here from your source data to the final product is taking your list of addresses, assigning the drivers to be efficient, which is the big piece, and then putting them in the order that makes the most sense, and then giving you all of that as an output file. One thing I'm not sure we mentioned, but because we're using the directions API from Google to actually calculate these routes, it is taking traffic into consideration. So you'll be getting the most efficient, speedy route for the time that you're creating the optimization, which can be very helpful.
A quick thing that I'd like to add, Aaron Ross, is that Aaron didn't show it in his presentation, but if you upload a CSV which has addresses which are slightly problematic, the app actually allows you to go through them and do a little bit of cleanup as well. So if it doesn't find something, it'll ask you to verify the address. So there is that little piece of interface as well, which comes up front as soon as you upload the CSV.
Perfect. Let's see. Someone has asked if the webinar will be available on our website. That is our plan. We had a little technology glitch in the beginning, but it should be being recorded. And as soon as we have that available, it will be uploaded. And we'll also send an email out to all of you with that recording. So thank you. Can you customize text?
Sorry, I think there's a question for Susan about if one person is responsible for this in your organization.
Yeah.
We actually have, wonderfully, we have a couple of volunteers. I had one person who's working with me in the beginning. She first learned it, and then she trained 2 other volunteers. It's really quite simple to use, which is great. But it's nice to kind of share the work throughout the week because we do have it happening 3 times a week. So right now we have 2 people. And it's definitely easy to let people do things on different days. It doesn't affect anything because they're all separate little chunks of time.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think the fact that you can train 1 volunteer and then they'll show 3 more. It is quite simple to use. Once you get the hang of it, is definitely a time saver there too. This is, I think, so is there the capability in the app to send a text to notify someone that a delivery is coming and confirm that it has arrived? I don't believe we have that functionality now. It sounds like a good idea, so we'll pass that on.
Yeah, currently the application doesn't have any sort of concept of specifically drivers or anything like that. It's really just creating separate routes, and then you can do what you want with those from there. So it's kind of, you'll just get those and then decide what you're going to do with that. So currently there is no internal system as far as assigning drivers, notifying drivers, or notifying, clients that their delivery has been made or anything like that. And that a lot of that is geared towards, getting this to be a useful tool that was working really quickly in kind of a short time frame. But also, as soon as you start having more details and having to store details about specific addresses associated with
phone numbers,
people, phone numbers, all that stuff, that personally identifiable information, really would have to ramp up security practices a large amount and make sure that everything's being done in a way that really, really enforces privacy standards. And currently, by not storing any of that, it's extremely private and so extremely secure.
Very interesting. Thank you for that clarification, Ross. Another techie type of question, are there plans to have an API interface for the upload instead of CSV? So maybe additional upload options in the future?
That's a great question. It is a very techie question. I wasn't expecting one of those. Not currently, but I do see how that would be really useful to be able to just, be able to send your request and then be able to just get the response and do whatever you want with those, as opposed to manually uploading a CSV and manually taking that and doing something with it. Great question. That's the first request we've gotten about that, I think, and I appreciate it. And yeah, I think if we get enough interest, that's something that we definitely 100% would be interested in doing. But currently, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily in the roadmap.
I'll say we definitely started with the focus on some of these smaller organizations locally that we had an immediate tie to as living in these communities. But over just the past couple of weeks, we've seen interest from some of the larger organizations around the country grow very rapidly. So as more and more users come on board, I'm sure that'll help steer the direction for the feature requests and the type of ways people are using this. So definitely keep submitting your ideas as they come to you.
Yeah, we're capturing all these questions and ideas that you've presented here. And if you sign up and start using the app, we also follow up with a survey where you can, share your suggestions or, any enhancement requests that you might have. And of course, at any time, you can email us at support@bringfood.care, and we'll respond to you that way as well.
Cool. Well, I believe we have gotten through all the questions at this point. If there's any other ones, ask them now and we'll squeeze them in here at the end. But I do want to, did you see anything that we missed?
I've seen a question asked several times here that I just want to clarify on. So,
sure, yeah, please.
I think I just saw it coming again. So can you customize text in the drop-off location field? I think, I maybe not understanding the question correctly, but I think what you would do is, what the data you get that you put in is the data you get out. And so if you have that as a field in your original data for a specific drop-off location, whether it's specific functions or whatever that is specific to that location, you'll be able to get that out in the CSV that comes out, and it'll just also have the route number and the stop number for that location as well. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that answers your question. That's kind of how I'm interpreting it as.
So to clarify on that, one of the reasons I brought that as an example in the demo is you can have any field of your imagination in addition to all this data, and the app will pass it through without affecting it to the final result. So anything that you upload will be available in the final download. You're not going to lose anything.
Yeah, and also we should probably all stop saying upload, because we're not actually uploading it anywhere. It stays in your browser. So just FYI, just to make that very
important.
Yeah,
there you go.
You're submitting or importing, but it's not. We're not sending out that data.
Yeah, we really encourage you to request the app, access to the app, and check it out. I mean, it's really easy to use, and as Susan has said, and just test it and see how you like it, and we hope that it fits your use case.
Great. And again, any questions that we missed or that you think of after the presentation, feel free to email and we can get back to you personally. So with that, I think we're ready to conclude here. I want to thank all the attendees who spent their time coming on and hearing from us today, and a big thank you to Susan from Arlington for being part of this presentation and donating her time for us. So thanks again, and we look forward to all of you joining up.
Thanks, Aaron.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.